You're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 2021. I don't know if it feels any different for any of you. But here we are, our first meeting in the new year. So welcome to the Public Works Commission meeting on Tuesday, January 19th. We have a full schedule, so I'm happy that we're able to start on time. Tim, have you taken the roll? Okay,
I have.
so we're ready. Okay, so we'll just get right into it. So the minutes for the Monday, November 16th meeting were distributed. Hopefully you all had opportunity to review. And how do they look? Any comments, amendments, changes? Okay, I'm seeing none. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I'll move for approval.
I got George Tarlis is first.
And a second.
Kip seconds.
Kip second. If you guys want to first or second, you're going to have to take yourself off mute. And yeah, so I'm just going to put Kip down as a second.
And just
Tim, did you
procedurally.
hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And Tim, to further that discussion procedurally, do you want me to call out the name for a second, or do you want to take a look at the screen and write that down? What works best for you?
Yeah, just as long as we have, a verbal first and second versus just hand raising. So
okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we are now moving on to the topic of new business. We have 4 items.
You want to do all in favor? Because we got a first and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. We'll back up to the minutes. So we have a first and second for approval of our minutes. All of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. The ayes have it unanimously. The minutes are approved as written for the November 2020 meeting. Okay, we are now on to the topic of new business. We have 4 items under new business that we'll be discussing tonight. And our first item is our appointment of our vice chairman. As many of you may recall, and we do have 2 new members, our vice chairman last year stepped down from the commission, and therefore at the end of 3rd quarter, we nominated and appointed a vice chairman who is Mr. Dave Huff. And Mr. Dave Huff is one of our city's first engineers, was involved in city management and government when we established a planning and zoning commission. And he is a great value and asset to this commission, and we're happy to have you as our leader. But it is a new year, and so the floor is to the commissioners if anyone would like to appoint themselves or reappoint Mr. Huff as vice chairman of our Public Works Commission for 2021. And I will just further add, what that means is that in my absence, the vice chairman will step in and run and conduct the meeting with Mr. Randick and Laura. Do we have any nominations for vice chairman in 2021 for our commission?
I'll move that we appoint David Howe, since he only had a short time.
Do we have a sec?
Second.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is we have a first to appoint Dave Huff, a second to appoint. All those in favor, please state so by saying aye.
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 The ayes have
Aye.
it. Congratulations, Mr. Huff. We hope you accept your nomination as our vice chairman for 2021. Great, we're in good hands. Okay, we are on to our second item of new business, which was included in your packet. The commission and committee handbook for the city of Town and Country. Our public works duties start on page 18. They're at page 18 of 19 of the commission handbook. Tim, the floor is yours, and then we can take up discussion.
Yeah, so this is an annual agenda item. We always send out the first of the year just as a refresher for the commissioners that have been on for a while. The handbook basically goes over, a couple different things as a commissioner, sunshine law, code of ethics, roles, just kind of the overall scope of being a commission member. And then it focuses down a little further for each separate commission. And as Alderman Holman stated, the Public Works Commission scope is on page 18 and 19. Basically goes over some of our duties and responsibilities, things that we oversee and will come across this commission. So most of the newer members probably have recently gotten this. Otherwise, if anyone has any questions or comments, be more than happy to address them. If not, then there's really no action for the commission to take. And this is just for informative purposes. Dave, you got to unmute yourself, Dave. You're muted.
I think there's a little lag with his connection as well.
Yeah. I think his video is frozen now as well.
Frozen, right. Oh,
He's back.
okay. You are unmuted and we can hear you now, Dave, but we didn't catch your comment. Can you check your volume or your connection with your headset?
You're no longer on mute, but there is no volume, Dave.
Do you have any visibility to his sound, Laura?
I don't. I'm trying to see if I can figure something out.
Well, we can do this, Dave, while you work to figure out your sound or your volume. We can always circle back to you once you get that fixed under discussion, or just circle back. The handbook doesn't require any vote or any action. So just to keep things moving, we can continue while he works out his mic.
Yeah. And Dave, I suggest maybe try to disconnect your mic and just use your sound from your laptop or desktop and see how that works out. But we are going to move on to our next agenda item. But I do want to just add, as you look through the duties and responsibilities in the under our commission, if you do, if something catches your eye or you have a recommendation or a change, please bring that forward and Tim and I can review it, and we can always discuss that and bring that forward to the Board of Aldermen as a recommended amendment, whether it's an addition or a deletion. Okay, so we are now moving on to our next item under new business, and it is the 2020 stormwater cost benefit analysis just conducted by HR Green at the end of last year for the 2020. And if you recall, at the end of third quarter or beginning of fourth quarter, we had a discussion on the point system and taking a look at how we value our evaluations for stormwater projects. And Tim was going to work with HR Green to dive deeper into that topic. And on this next discussion item, Tim will take over, and and we will share the screen to show you some updates, changes that we've added to Stormwater program. Tim, the floor is yours.
All right. So we, in your packet, the one thing that we did add was the natural resource map that our city planner, Ryan Spencer, has created to just give you guys a general idea of the watersheds in Town and Country, the different areas that are affected by those watersheds, the three that we have: Creek Watershed, Grand Glaze Creek Watershed, and Deer Creek Watershed. That then will move us into our website. So if Laura, if you can share that, your screen with the website. We've added 2 pages, and I'll wait for Laura.
Hold on one sec.
Okay,
I was on the wrong page.
sorry.
And while you work on this and present this, since we've already gone over it, Tim, I'm going to mute myself and try and work with our vice chairman.
Okay.
And getting him back online.
So the first page we'll go over is we've updated the stormwater projects page. This has our updated program list. What we've done this year is we've actually broken it out into 2 separate categories. We have the Creve-Coeur Creek and the Grand Glaze Creek watershed, which is the main program list. We have the 44 projects on there, and this is funded 100% by the city of Town and Country. We broke out these 2 from the Deer Creek watershed, which is right below, because as of 2021 fiscal year, MSD is now assessing those residents in the Deer Creek watershed an additional, it's called a OMCI, Operation Maintenance Capital Improvement Taxing District, which they had previously assessed at 0, but on previous attempts to levy capital taxes for work in that area and throughout MSD's regional area have failed. They had to address through MS4 and some other requirements to do some capital projects. So they are now assessing it. So George, Bob Wunderlich, and Pam Holman, who all live in that watershed, will probably see a slight uptick in their MSD bill. So they have not provided us the process yet to be reimbursed for these funds. But starting with the 2021 fiscal year, the city of Town and Country will get $56,238 annually for any projects in that watershed. So we broke those out separately. We're going to kind of bank those dollars until we get to a point where we can start doing the design and construction of those projects. So of the 5 new projects identified, 3 remained in the main capital list for the Grand Glaze and Creve-Coeur Creek. They ended up being number 5, number 6, and number 44 on the list. So those have been evaluated and then incorporated into the program. The other 2 new projects ended up, they're in the Deer Creek watershed, so they're listed as number 1 and number 5 on that separate list. So we use the same evaluation, the cost benefit analysis, the cost of construction versus the benefit points to rank out these 8 projects the same way we did the other 44. So that is our completed cost benefit analysis. A couple other updates to the page. We've added at the very bottom is the verbiage for property owners to owner participation. So if you have a project that's been on the list for a number of years and you're looking to accelerate it, it allows property owners the ability to partner with the city in funding to accelerate their project. We're currently in construction as we speak right now on Tidewater and Arlington Oaks as the first example of that partnership where the property owner funded all of the engineering and then got the property owners and neighbors to donate the permanent drainage easements to MSD for that project. So city is solely funding construction. The other page, if Laura can jump over to the new page that we created, which is the stormwater completed projects page.
Tim, can we ask questions about this page before you move?
Oh, yep, let's go back. Yep. Go ahead, Tim.
Just real quick, is the project ID number, are those years? What's like 2015, 13, 2015, 5?
Yeah, so the first 4 digits is the year that it was identified, and the year that we did the first analysis on it, and then depending on how many were in that year, they received a corresponding number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
So we have a few projects left from our inception of the program was in 2010. That was the first year that we identified and implemented this this program, and then have added to them since.
The root of my question is actually, and this is more a question on how it works. I'm using a personal example. Line 14 used to be my house.
Okay.
And by that date, that went in the owner before me.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 owners in on the process. And I was just curious, once it's in, does it stay on forever? Is there an auditing process, or it triggered that question for me because I saw the address and it went in actually before I owned the house, and I've actually already sold the house. So
yeah. So once we identify the project, it'll stay in our capital program list until until either we construct it or that property owner determines that it's no longer essential or needed and can be removed. Sometimes you have property owners that are looking to sell the house and they said, you know what, we've spent 20 grand ourselves doing a private, mitigation system that has addressed the issue before because we wanted to sell the house and didn't want to wait. Can we have this removed? Or there's a change of hands with owners where a previous owner may say, well, this is a huge issue. And then you have a new homeowner that says, you know what, this is just drainage. This is how yards drain, and it's not as large of a concern to me. And I'm really not, interested in participating, because sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. And for us to come in and completely tear up somebody's yard that maybe had lived there for 30 years and felt that it was a high priority versus somebody that's been there for 2 years and is somewhat indifferent. That's really the only time we'll take them off if we're not constructing.
Thank you. That helps.
Yeah.
So, Tim, let me just add to that. So if I see one, for example, for my subdivision that goes back to 2015, line 26, line 25, should I contact them and say, hey, is this still an issue?
Let me see. So that's the
234 Dalton.
Yes. So she actually called me out over the fall after the August rains and everything.
I'm not surprised. She would not let them slide usually. Yeah.
So we actually looked at it. She has done some work herself. So that project actually moved eight places up the list because we were able to remove that cost for that system that she installed herself, reduced her construction costs, but her points still remained the same. So it elevated her up the list. So, we encourage everybody, they call, we let them know that the list has been updated, see where they're at, review. If you click on each of the individual tabs, it pulls up the complete
Can you
project.
click on a tab, Tim, just to walk through it, especially since we have some new members? Thank you, Laura.
So it'll pull up the overall scope of the project, what's affected, a number of parcels that are affected. There's then a conceptual drawing that has a general idea of what we think may solve the issue with a very, like a high level look at the project. There's not a high, we're not doing detailed hydraulic analysis or design work on it. We then scroll down to, and this may be blocked by our faces, but on that same plan sheet, you have the same thing that you have on here, which is the overall cost of construction, the LBI points, and then the impacts of the different categories. And then each property that's impacted, if you continue to scroll down, Laura, has the probable cost of construction, engineering, all the associated work that's involved, and then each individual LBI cut sheet per property that shows the frequency and the point value for that frequency for each parcel impacted. So every one that's on here is like that. So the new projects that are identified, any old projects where somebody calls and says, "Hey, I've been on the list, where am I at?" We always encourage them to pull it up, take a look, see if there's something that was missed. We try for all the new projects, those property owners meet on site with HR Green. We also have in our code that any project that has not been allocated resources to or touched within a 3-year period, it gets reevaluated so that we can see if there's any change in condition or update, and then adjust the overall program accordingly. If things are significantly getting worse on an annual basis, then that's identified. We keep track with the pictures when we do the updates, and can really see where things are progressing or not, to change their ranking.
So just to circle back to the LBI piece of it, that is the conversation that we brought up at the end of last year, that Tim will work with HR Green this year for the scale on how these projects are ranked.
Correct.
And so this page right here adds a lot of value to the residents in the community that are on the list, so they can understand where they rank, the scope of their project. If in fact they would want to take on any of this themselves, they have, initial plans presented online that they can work with whomever they would choose to hire, or if they want to look at the cost and understand the cost and consider a cost share program with the city. Again, this information is right there at their fingertips, and they can connect with the city and if they would like to consider that approach. So a lot of value on this page for our residents. Tim, can you just overview the process in which how many times our commission reviews any one project once a resident reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I have a stormwater issue. Can you come take a look?"
Yep. So and I'm going to jump back real quick a little bit more to the LBI, because we're going to see that a little later this year and touch on 2 other things. One thing that we're really going to look at this year is any kind of regional or community improvement as far as detention or water quality goes, to provide any of those projects some additional points, because we want to emphasize those projects and look at them as a priority. So if a property owner is going to provide that additional regional detention system or storage, besides addressing what issues they may or may not have in their yard, that's something we want to put a big spotlight on. The other thing, just to touch base with some of the newer commissioners, we've had subcommittees to look at this, I believe at least twice, and one of the main talking points is length of time that a project has been on the program, and if those projects should receive any additional value or points, to help elevate them on the list. I think each time we've done this, the commission or subcommittee has determined that the worst project should be done first, the ones that are the most impactful to a residence or a structure, and regardless of the timing on when they're identified. If your project was identified today and you have structural house flooding, and your points are put you at number one, then that should be the priority and the focus versus somebody that was identified in 2010 that may have some erosion in a rear portion of their yard that doesn't really affect any public utility or permanent or private structure. So then now to jump back to Pam's question or comment, how many times does the commission see any one project? So initially, any project that's been identified, we have the initial cost benefit analysis done by HR Green. So this would be for the 2020 projects. This is the first time it comes before or in front of the commission. We then, again, like I said, any project that hasn't been allocated in a 3-year cycle gets reanalyzed by HR Green. But at a minimum, we would have the initial cost benefit analysis. Then once that project is ready for allocating resources, we have a design contract with a engineer firm to design the construction documents and the project. That comes before the commission for recommendation as well. And then the last step is once we get to a point where we've bid out the project and we're ready for construction, that construction contract comes before the commission. So at a minimum, any project comes before this commission 3 times. So if there's any other questions on the stormwater projects page, I can answer that. If not, we're going to go to our new page, which is the stormwater completed project page. And this is our newest page that we've added. This will actually allow anyone from the public or the commission, you guys do a lot of work with these stormwater projects, but really don't get to see the physical construction or the end product. So we're doing kind of a tracking system and providing the completed projects, scope of work, our construction documents, restoration plan, and then a progression of that projects and those projects being constructed and completed. So you can kind of get to see a little bit of start, during, and completion of the projects.
Tim, can you speak to once the projects are completed? Well, first of all, let me back up. This page is fantastic, and I appreciate your time on this and Laura's time on this. I know it was a group effort, and it just it's really great, and I love sharing this information with the community. Can you share with our commissioners, once these projects are completed, performance evaluation and what steps you're taking going forward there, please?
Sure. So we've started, and not just for stormwater projects, but all capital improvement projects. So whether it's trail, road construction, anything that significantly impacts the community, subdivision, or property owners, we have developed a performance evaluation form, a fillable form. So any property owner or subdivision trustees or anyone that we have to coordinate with or engage with, we're sending out those evaluation forms so they can give us feedback to see what we're doing right and what we can do better. The things that we're doing right, we want to make sure we know what those are so we can continue to do that at the high level that we're doing. anything that we need to improve on, we want to make sure that we can make those adjustments where needed. So we've recently sent those out, I think maybe within the past 2 weeks, to any impacted property owner. So we're slowly getting those back, and we'll use that feedback to help adjust as we move forward.
Great, thank you. A lot of great work, and again, just circling back, conversations in third and fourth quarter inspired some of these changes and also inspired new ideas to move this program and the way we communicate the program and work with the residents forward, and then evaluating our performance. So we appreciate, all the good input that our commissioners provide to help us try and work smarter and perform at a higher level. Any comments, questions regarding the 2 pages and the cost benefit analysis?
Maybe just one comment from a new member. I think the transparency here is fantastic. I mean, it's available. You can see both the planning, you can see the prioritization. It's easy to understand. And then you can see, hey, the work gets done. Here's the proof. So I think the transparency on both sides is commendable. Good stuff.
Great, thank you. That's for you and Laura, Tim. Good stuff.
And then, did you have something else you wanted to, I don't know if you had anything to add about the website. So understand that anything that goes on here, I basically, kind of say, here's what I have. Laura, I don't know what to do, make it work. So she's the mastermind behind the scenes when it comes to the website, knows the do's and don'ts. And I'm just, here's some documents. I don't make it look good. So
You're laying it on a little thick there, Tim.
I always,
But I appreciate it.
You guys.
I did want to point out on the stormwater projects page, right here at the top, it does have our, obviously our department's main line, which is me. If I'm not there, somebody else is answering that phone. People do have the ability to submit their concerns via the website. And that's a quick link from that page. So they can fill out this form and it gets sent to Tim and I. Tim's the main respondent, obviously. And if he's out of the office on vacation, I'll respond saying we'll get back to, in a certain number of days. And then I also wanted to point out this studied projects map that HR Green provides to us. I think it's really great because for people that may be having any kind of problems and not know, their surrounding areas where maybe Tidewater is at, or Summerhill, what have you. So you can go and see this map of town and country, kind of realize where you're at, and then all these stars indicate identified projects, and you're actually able to click on these numbers and it'll pull up
Project.
that specific, that project. So I think that's really great what HR Green does. Now realize these project pages are quite large, so they might take a minute to load, but I think that's something that, obviously helps people. So just some functions of what we have out there and what people can view.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And thanks, Kip, for your comments. As you take time with these 2 pages and look through them, if you have any comments, suggestions, recommendations for Tim or Laura, please shoot them a quick email. I believe, Tim, we will have a similar presentation for our Board of Aldermen at our next meeting. And so we still have some time to tweak if the commissioners have any suggestions with regard to that. So we're presenting to you first, getting your input, feedback, and then it'll go live. It will present to the board at the next meeting.
Do we have any idea of funding for 2021? For the
Yes.
stormwater?
So
Yes.
the budget's already been approved. So we have the only construction project that is completed or ready is the Arlington Oaks Tidewater that's currently under construction. And then we have 5 of the 8 projects that were in design prior to the COVID pause that will be started back up for design. So those include 1839 Woodmark, 1120 Westmore, 13211 Thornfield, Laurel Lakes subdivision, and Oak Springs. So just for the newer people, you will not see those on the list because once we start allocating resources, start design and or construction, they're removed from the list. So those that you see on the website are all pending. They're pending funding, which once we get to the point where we can start pulling more off of that list, they'll go to you guys for recommendation for engineering approval.
Right. So in round numbers for 2021, are we spending approximately 630,000, Tim? And that's the cost benefit analysis, the other maintenance, and then those projects that you just mentioned, including Topping Road.
Yeah. Yep. That includes all of the above that you said, roughly around 600.
And of those projects, we've seen all of them at least once. I'd have to go back, and I don't know, maybe you know off the top of your head, will any of those be coming through for the construction piece of it, or have we already reviewed those as a commission?
No, they're all still in the design phase, so we haven't.
Right.
None are ready for construction yet. We're hoping to get a few done this year, completed, so that we can program those for the 2022 budget for construction.
And this funding comes out of our restricted parks and storm fund.
That's correct.
Further discussion or questions? No. Okay, well, thank you guys. Good work. We're going to move on to our next item under new business, our final item, which is the 2021 crack sealing program contract. That's included in your packet as the Ward 1 commissioners, or should be aware of, that we just had our crack sealing performed last month. And Tim, the floor is yours. We've heard from residents, and if you can update us on the process, how many contracts you reviewed, and the performance of the Ward 1 sealing, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the 2021 crack sealing program was placed out to bid, and we did a bid opening on January 12th, receiving 4 bids. The range in submittals were from low of 36,441, which is the sweetness contract you have before you, to the high bidder of $89,081. So there's quite a wide range in those submittals. The 2021 crack sealing program will cover all of our mainline roads minus topping due to the topping road reconstruction. And this will be performed in advance of our citywide striping program. So Bope Road, all of Clayton Road, Mason Ridge, Babbler, Old Woods Mill, any of our non-subdivision streets will have the joint sealing. So we did have a couple comments from residents that forward to the commission regarding the 2020 crack sealing, and the most of the feedback that we get it's kind of a, it's a mixed bag. I don't think anyone really ever reaches out to us and says how much they love crack sealing or how great it looks. The aesthetics is a challenge, but we also have to balance the the maintenance of the roadway to what our available funds are. So I did pull some information for the commission just to reference in general. The last time we did asphalt road resurfacing was in 2018.
Right.
That treatment that we did, we performed on 9 streets, a microsurfacing. Of those 9 streets covered about 27,000 square yards at a cost to the city of just over $80,000. So this previous year, this fall, for the Ward 1 crack sealing or joint sealing, we performed this work on 51 streets, totaling over 160,000 square yards. Obviously, the joint sealing does not cover that square yardage completely, but the impacted areas, we were able to touch 51 streets versus 9 at a total cost to the city of $26,700. So we balance the aesthetics versus the ability to come in and touch those streets, and really want to look at, kind of a little bit more of our long-term future planning for additional asphalt or roadway treatments, Nova chip or something, a few years down from that, once the joint sealing gets to a point where we have to do more substantial base repairs or mill and patch to come and do that overall surface treatment. So of those 51 streets, we heard from 4 residents that had concerns about either the aesthetics or the application of the product. So, we can always do better, but we're fairly satisfied. George.
Tim, who did the sealing in Ward 1?
It was Sweetens, the same contractor that did for the 2021.
I'll just give you my perspective. I was shocked at how poor it was. It was a horrendous job. It was like a juvenile hour, and it's very unbecoming of Town and Country. I got to tell you, it's embarrassing. If you want me to tell you the truth, I was embarrassed by the quality of the work they did. And go out on the street and there's black tar in people's yards. There's huge cracks that were completely missed. And then others where there's dribbles like little popcorn kernels all the way down the street. I mean, it was really, really poor. And if that's who we're continuing to use, I just giving you one person's perspective. I was shocked at how poor.
I second what he's saying.
This is not Town and Country Cal, and it was insulting to be honest.
I agree with that, Tim. Regarding the letter that you got from, or you showed us all from Watson, I took a walk up and down that street. Quite honestly, I never did bother before, but I went over and looked at that one, and I got to tell you, it's pretty bad. What is your opinion of it, Tim? You're the one that runs the show.
Yeah, so I mean, I obviously think that joint sealing as a whole is not something that is well liked within the city of Town and Country and some other municipalities. It's not aesthetically pleasing. I think that there are areas where the workmanship was not at a high quality. I think other areas they did perform well. So we're looking at kind of a cross section when you get into the roadways, and you balance some streets where you have some property owners that are complaining that the amount of joint sealing is used. They don't like that aesthetic. So then when you go on the other streets, you're looking at your your main joints, your main asphalt centerline joints or longitudinal joints, to provide that sealant in. And we have others that, we haven't done enough. So you're kind of, juggling the ball depending on what street or subdivision you're in. But I know that it's not, the aesthetic is not what most property owners like. It's balancing what our budget is and, what we have to work with.
Do you specify the material to be used? I have a reason for asking that question. Out of my airplane hangar, the taxiways going into my hangar have to be resealed because they're cracked, and they look they fill the crack. They're at surface level. They're not bubbled up on the top. I'm not sure what the specifications for the material are, but I got to believe maybe that's something we ought to look at.
Yeah, we have specific material that has to be used, as well as the application in which they have to apply it.
Have you tested that material?
Have we tested it?
Yeah, the reason I ask that is I see this all the time. And it doesn't, the stuff we use out there doesn't ride on the top.
Yeah.
It fills the crack.
Yeah, so we haven't tested material, the joint sealing material, since I've been here, which I started in 2015, and we've progressed through the entire city in that time with joint sealing. But we do have the specification for the type of material, and some of that too. We've talked with the contractor is. The volume that they're using and allowing that tar pot to properly heat that material up.
Yeah,
if it doesn't reach that prime temperature, because they are using so much material and they're refilling it and you don't get it hot enough, then the application is not as it's not applied as well as it would be if it could reach
that makes sense.
It looked like the people doing the work were getting attacked by bees, and they were sprinting down the street and going at a full clip and zigzagging and not even hitting the mark. I mean, I'll tell you, the first thing that hit me when I saw these bids was probably my biggest complaint of some of the business that the city does, which is taking the lowest bid. Saying, you've got competent contractors and we're required to take the lowest bid if they meet a certain threshold. And that's the first thing that hit me. Because
you're right, because if you look at the bids, which I'm just looking at here, a good portion of that's material aside from labor, and I got to believe their labor is fairly much the same.
Right.
I mean, even if they were paying minimum wage, the labor would be a constant figure.
And the bids are pretty far apart.
You got it.
Go down
to be a difference in the material.
So
go down a rabbit, but
can I just throw something out there just so we're clear? So we aren't, the debate isn't about crack sealing, it's about the provider and the performance. Is that an accurate statement? That this commission isn't looking to move away from crack sealing, but put under a microscope who we hire, what's in the materials, and maybe we look at the ratios and then performance. And Tim, I think about, for example, I have an asphalt driveway, and I know if I hire a company that puts a higher quantity of sand in the mixture, it's going to cost me 3 times more than a company who doesn't. So I can pay anywhere from $300 for my driveway to $1,200. And it's all the same ingredients. It's just the ratio of those ingredients and layering the sand. So I'm wondering if Sweeten's ingredients to their fabrication is the same as everybody else, but just different levels of the ingredients, which, I'm not an expert in tar, but just curious.
Yeah, so we have our material standards and specifications for it require, it has to have at least a 15% crumbled lumber. They have to meet the ASTMD 6690 type 1 material. There is specifications for the material, pouring temperature, as well as the material, the placement of the material, and the type of tool that's used. You know, so we have, again, that kind of range and threshold of what can we do with the dollars that we have. When I first started in 2015, we had this program or project started and stopped in a village up in Ward 4, Conway Village, or a subdivision. The subdivision was not pleased with the aesthetic of the joint ceiling, similar to what has been placed in 2 and 1 and on our main line and 3. And as a reference, so we did 51 streets for $26,700. Again, that's kind of stretching, trying to get the maximum amount of work we can with our dollars. In Conway Village, we stopped the joint ceiling. We had a contractor come in and double saw cut all of the joints and hand seal that subdivision. That cost us, I think it was either $13,000 or $14,000 for one subdivision. So when we have, somewhere in the range of, I think it was the lane miles that we have to maintain, we have to try to utilize certain applications and techniques that may not be as aesthetically pleasing. They tend to soften over time because, you're not, right now you have that glistening, shiny black material that's on there. The more times we drop a plow blade on it, you eliminate that extra residual that's on the roadway. And just the wear of the vehicles driving across it kind of softens it. Areas that are in worse shape, that have more of that joint sealing, we're looking either to come back in the same year, the next year, or within 3 years to do a Nova chip or a surface treatment that then covers what's there. And you kind of want those joints and or any other areas that are in bad shape, mill and patch before you do that. So it's, again, it's trying to work with what our budget dollars are to get, our maximum improvements in the roadways.
I think what I'm hearing is that we don't disagree that we need to provide maintenance and that this is a solution, but the current provider did not meet our expectations. And so we're hesitant to bring forward a recommendation to the board to approve it just solely based on being the lowest bid. Is that, commissioners, is that correct?
No, definitely.
Everybody hear me?
Yes. Can you all hear Mr. Huff?
Hello, testing 1, 2.
We
Can you
got you,
hear me?
Dave.
Okay, wait, Dave, okay, can you guys hear him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, I don't know. When I saw the pictures, and I'm familiar with it, and the process. And the thing is that no two cracks are the same. They're not they have junk in them, various and so forth. So you just can't paint the top of them. Some cases you paint the top and you catch air in there, and then you get air bubbles. The problem with doing this stuff is that you're better off not doing it all unless you do it right. Because if you don't do it right, water gets in the crack, seeps under it, slides along it, and then pops it up. So it actually makes it worse than better. It's not something you can just paint on the top. And I knew, judging by the bids, that the people who were doing it and we saw didn't even know how to do it. Just cheap labor, just ran through, pasted on the top, whatever it is. And it's not something you can rush. You got to blow it out first with an air hose. You got to go ahead and get it dried out or cleaned out or whatever it is in all spots. And then you have to apply it in such a way that it can go down and drain into the crack, not just paint either side of the crack at the street level. It's a slower job. You cannot rush it. And I don't think these people know what they're doing, or they think they can get away with it, or what. But there's no sense in doing it with over and over again the same way, because that's nonsense. You're not going to get. You're going to have a way of testing them first, and going out and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is your sample. In order to bid this job, we want to see how you do it, and let them do 10, 20 feet or whatever it is, and then say, okay, this is fine. This is the way we want it. Now you're entitled to bid. But if you don't do that, you don't establish the standard. And these people say, well, I just put it on top of it. I think it's supposed to drain in there. Well, it doesn't work that way. It's much harder to do than you think.
Okay, let's hear from Tim.
Yeah, so
Tim?
they come in advance of all roadways, and they clean out the joints. They use air compressors and blowers to remove any residual material in there in advance of using the joint sealing. They then follow with a tar pot that has the material at appropriate temperature. Again, they're not going to hit 100% of the joints that are in the roadway. Some of the smaller alligatoring or web joints, we're looking at most of the priority joints, the center line or longitudinal lines. And then once you reach a certain size of joint, you're exceeding what that product is going to be efficient in, and then you have to come back and do mill and patch. So there are some joints that are cracks that are much smaller that weren't done but weren't the mainline cracks, and then you had other joints that are larger cracks, so that putting in 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch material is just gonna fall out, and those were not done either. So they apply it with the tar pot through the joint, and then they use a U-shaped or V-shaped squeegee to make that material penetrate into the roadway, and that's a pretty standard operation of who you're using. I think the control, probably where more of our issues come in, is the operator that is controlling the hose, that is putting the material on the roadway. That's the person that really dictates the aesthetic, the quality of the aesthetic. But we have not been, as far as the quality of work, they've met our specifications for application. Again, I understand that the aesthetic is not is probably more of the issue, I think, with most people that are concerned.
Well, Tim, can I ask a question here? One of the things is that I know that what you're saying, and I understand the aesthetic, but the thing that Mr. Watson brought up is there's some pretty large joints that were just completely missed. And I get it that when you're doing, 50, 60 miles of roadway, that things are going to get missed.
Yeah.
But it just seems like the care wasn't there. So have you had a chance to speak with Sweeten's Contracting just to find out their perspective and what can be done? Because I think a lot of it, we all make mistakes. It's how do you handle the aftermath?
Sure. Yeah. No. So we've talked with Sweetens, and they're obviously, as we go through the road, the 51 streets that they did over the fall, if there's anything significant that we find jump out at us, once weather allows or permits, they'll come back in and address those issues. Obviously, we need it dry. We need the temperature to be at a certain level for them to come back and do that. And in addition, anything that we come across that they didn't do that exceeds a width of what will make sense, we're going to come back in-house and have to do a mill and patch in that area as well. So this isn't a thing of, hey, we're done, and if you have issues, too bad. So as we go through our streets and we look through some of those pictures, again, I think, some of them, yes, there are extra things that Sweetens could have done. There are other areas that I've seen that have been pointed out that putting that product in wouldn't really be beneficial. And again, some of the bigger things that I've seen is the application for the end aesthetic. I understand though too that will soften over time.
So just to, and Bob, I'll go to you next, but if you had 51 streets and we had 4 residents contact the city, and now we have 3 of us here, because I'll include myself, who are unsatisfied with workmanship, we have, over 10% of those streets where you have residents coming back and saying, you know what, it is the workmanship and it is filling those cracks. So let me just jump to this next question. What ward is up next for crack sealing, and when did you anticipate doing that?
So this 2021, again, is for the main line. It's in no subdivisions. It's on Clayton Road, Bope Road, all of our main line, and
okay.
Joint sealing to occur in advance of our citywide striping program. So the next subdivision that would get, or next area that has subdivisions that would get done would be in 2022, and that would be Ward 4 and a small portion of Ward 3.
But you're looking to do the crack sealing before the painting of the streets at what month of this year?
Yeah, so we would like to have the joint sealing done this year in, I would say, late March, early April, once weather permits. And then the striping usually will occur in May or June.
I think what I'm hearing from this commission is they are not comfortable putting forth a recommendation for Sweetens until they come back to Tony's point and provide information on how they're going to address the unsatisfactory work. So I guess we would look, well, Bob, what were you going to offer before I jump to what our conclusion is of this discussion?
Now, I was going to ask how we oversee, supervise, and make sure the work that's being done, when it's being done, is satisfactory. Do we go out and monitor these people?
Tom and I typically will get out on site when they are in town working. We'll communicate with the foreman or superintendent on the job site, inspector review, a portion of the work that they're doing. We try to get to several, cross sections of streets to look at the end product. And if there's a concern or an issue, then we'll bring that up with the contractor at the time. We don't get to every street, but we try to get out as we can.
Okay.
Well, is there a situation where you can go and look at it now with a spray gun on the end of a wand, and every time you see a spot it didn't do right, just spray at them with a bright color and then have them go and fix those?
Yeah, I wouldn't come back out and highlight and spray paint all over streets or roadways for the contractor, because that's just going to end in a lesser aesthetic than what the neighborhood is looking for, and just create more issues.
And I think ultimately, if you're going to do that, why not just hire a better person that's going to do the self-monitoring? We don't need to be in the business of babysitting.
Right.
Well, in Thornhill, we do our own streets and we do the chip and seal and all that. But when we do that, we also have to do cracks. And the people who do the chip and seal go and do the cracks before that, so that they don't catch any air pockets or anything else like that. And then they go ahead and chip and seal over that. it's a laborious process, but you have to do it that way because there's no other way. I saw some pictures where they didn't even get over the crack. They just cut a corner and just didn't. They were just going over fast over it, and they missed it entirely. In other places, you can get that where it goes on the surface only, but it traps air bubbles. The surface tension of the stuff you put in there is something you have to watch also. It's got to be hot enough, and it's got to not trap air underneath of it.
Right. Tom, did you have something? Tom was, I'm sorry, Dave, you might, Tom, you're muted. You're muted. Your mute is on.
Hello?
Hang on just a second, Dave.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
No, the only thing I was saying is on this whole deal, when we kind of took the low bidder and we've used them before, and that's all fine and good. And I think it kind of depends. Not that they shouldn't do a good job. I was going to say, Tim, are they the kind of company that will listen to you, or is it just kind of a lot of eyewash, and they're going to go do the same job? They're getting X amount of money for it, and I'm saying, can you squeeze them a little bit to maybe do a better job for what they're doing? Or on the other hand, they may say, hey, BS, it's a $25,000 job. This is what you're going to get. They're not going to tell you that, but I mean, they're just their kind of attitude. It seems like if you paid more, sure, you're going to get a better job because they're going to do more time in on it. Doesn't sound like it was. I mean, so hopefully what I'm saying is there's got to be a contractor that'll do a little bit better job for maybe a little bit more money. Not the top guy. You don't need that. You don't need a Cadillac job, but you need a little bit better than. And I mean, hey, I know a little bit about sealing. I mean,
here's the engineering on it.
Go ahead.
Hang on just a second. Tom still has the floor. Dave, hang on.
Okay, the engineering.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Get it in there, and you have the cracks. You actually
Thanks,
do more harm than good because moisture gets down in there, and then it freezes and pops it up. You're better off not doing the crack at all if you don't do it right.
Correct.
Okay, so I think we've all assessed the situation and provided input. Do we have a recommendation on how to move forward? Or Tim, do you just want me to take a vote on this, or would you like to hear some type form of recommendation?
So just to provide the commission with a little more background or information, as Tom just brought up about the contractor, we utilized Sweetens for joint sealing in 2000. I'm just going back a few years, 15, 17, 18, and 20. They also performed the complete street reconstruction of Claymark in, I believe it was 2017 or 2018. So they're not a unknown quantity to us. And again, based off of the temperatures on when the product can be applied and what we can do, while I have a list of areas that have been brought to our attention about concerns, I can't have them come back this week and redo anything. The weather just is not appropriate. So if we were to reutilize this contractor in the spring to do the main line, would be the point in time where I would have them readdress the deficiencies or missed areas within Ward 1 as part of that initial contract. If we don't utilize or don't have a recommendation for Sweetens for the 2021 crack sealing on the main line, I'm still planning on having them come back in the spring to address any deficiencies or missed areas that we'll identify for them. Again, but that'll be something that staff goes through and says, which areas need to be, have a little additional work. Any residual material or extra material that was left on the street, that's, slightly different than any cracks or joints that were missed.
So from a timing standpoint.
Well, you can't do anything.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
It's hard. No, I said you can't do anything until the spring anyway, right?
Yeah, we have a specification on temperature for application, and then you want a certain level, of lack of moisture in the roadway in order to make the oil and water doesn't mix. So you want to have everything be completely dry.
So is it possible between now and our February meeting for you to have a thorough discussion with Sweetens and have report back to the commission on how they're going to address Ward 1 and relook at the contract then based on what they say they will or will not do?
Sure.
Is that enough time though to react? Because it'd be week 3 of February.
Yeah, I mean, if the commission would like to have some additional, correspondence between the contractor and staff regarding the work performed in 1 prior to making a recommendation, we'll make it work.
Commissioner,
right. You can't do it. You can't do it in February or anything like that.
No, we're not suggesting doing it in February. We're suggesting getting in touch with Sweetens and Sweetens coming back to us and letting us know in the spring how they're going to address the deficiencies in Ward 1 before we would even consider moving forward with this contract.
Yeah.
I think that's what you have to do because
Oh,
he
sure.
didn't comply and so forth. They know what it's good. I mean, they can talk all they want,
they
whether it's
do.
a good job or not. They know
do.
what a good job
Right.
is.
Okay. So,
And let
they
them.
just got caught or whatever the reason is, they couldn't do it right. And all you have to go ahead and blow them out.
I think we're
and all that
ready.
kind of stuff.
I think we're ready to make a motion on this. Are we ready to make a motion to
Hold on just a minute.
continue?
I'm not 100% sure it's a good idea to put Tim in a real bad light. And I think he should have a little bit of leeway in dealing with with Sweetens or anyone else rather than just pressure the hell out of them, tell them we're all dissatisfied. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you're paying Tim, so put it in Tim's hands and let him see what he can work out with these guys.
I kind of think that's what we said. I mean, they need to have an explanation of what went wrong and what they're going to do the next time if they get the contract. It's as simple as that.
And commit to fixing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and fixing it. And see
So
what they say.
I think where we were headed was just a recommendation for a continuance on the Sweetens contract. Is that where we are?
I think so.
Well,
I would make that motion.
Bob?
Yeah, I think we should. I'm not ready to approve of it. I think we have to figure out what they're going to do.
Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, so do I have a motion to?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
And the motion on the floor is to continue, have a continuance on the crack sealing contract. And Tim will come back to us with more information in February.
Good.
Okay. So, Tony, you were the first, and who seconded it? I'm sorry.
I think Tom, correct?
Okay.
Sure, I'll second.
What happened?
Nothing happened yet. I'm just waiting for Tim to.
I'm writing.
He's writing.
Oh,
I can
okay.
see that he's writing. So I'm just giving him a minute before we move on.
Laura's got him covered.
I'm confident that Sweetens will provide us, if we need a letter stating any areas that we determine have been missed or deficient in Ward 1, that they will address under this current contract. So I'm fairly indifferent to waiting another month as long as that additional information provides, the needed backing so the commission can feel comfortable making the recommendation.
Sure.
And Tim, you obviously know what to say, but maybe if we can have a discussion with them about getting a more seasoned operator, the one that's actually applying the sealant, so that, you know, there's not as many kernels as George says, or as many misjoints.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, that concludes new business. And thank you for the in-depth discussion. I'm sorry, Dave?
I would ask, before you show, I'd like to ask everybody, is anybody else using Spectrum today? I mean, if anybody is using Spectrum, that means they can do it properly.
We have 2 commissioners who are using Spectrum.
So not to,
Okay.
not to rush anybody, but we still have the old business and discussion, and Parks and Trails has a 6:30 meeting that we have to kind of try to get off before so they can get going. So I'm not rushing anybody.
So Dave, I will circle back to you and Laura after this, and we'll figure out plans.
Because I can have their names and they'll be on their records there as far as that goes. And then I can go ahead and say, hey, it worked for them. Why did it work for us?
Gotcha,
They've had a lot of problems with that, and I need to do that. Yeah.
I will circle back with you with that information. We are going to, we have to have our meeting completed so Parks and Trails can get on here. So, and any items we don't discuss now, we'll have to continue to our next meeting, and we only have 2 items left. So we're going to move forward with old business. And this is a continuance from our December meeting. The minimum standards for pool drains. Tim resent out the information. Tim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so this is a revisit of last fall, our you know, our 2 times a year, our spring startup and fall shutdown of pool drains, not having anything specifically in place regarding the discharge and or cleaning or draining of your pool. So we've provided in the packet the ordinance language, some additional municipalities language, Manchester, Creve Coeur, Baldwin, a few neighboring communities that we reviewed, as well as the link that was sent out to the email to MSD's specific page that addresses proper draining of spas and swimming pools. So much of that language was pulled directly from MSD. So this was continued to take some additional time to review. I sent that information out. I have not heard back from any commissioners. So if we have any further discussion.
Further discussion?
I read them and so forth. They seem to cover what I asked before, what we were missing. So I think you got to all you have to do is package them.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion to move to for the standards as written?
Tim, I have a problem. I got a real problem with this backwash part of that article. And the problem is this: when you backwash different filters, different constructed filters, i.e. sand, i.e. DTE, i.e. cartridge, what you'll find is that in the discharge, especially in the case of DTE, you're discharging filter powder. And this filter powder going into the sanitary sewer system is not a good idea because it forms a deposit. Ditto with sand to a lesser degree. So I got a real problem with, especially if you look at the other material you send out, there's nothing that I see in that material has to do with discharging backwash water into the sanitary. The only one I saw it in is the one you've got here in Town and Country.
This MSD's requirement, because they're the one that's got to live with it, and they have in our pool in our neighborhood, which is of course a bigger pool and all that, it's pretty tight. Whatever applies to that, they make us do it.
Tim's
you go back and look, if you go back and look at a lot of these, they're talking about in accordance with the plumbing code in St. Louis County, doesn't say anything about MSD that I could see.
Well, that's, yeah, okay, I thought I saw that in there one place. I may have missed it. But MSD has the requirements, and that's what I brought up before when we got Lockett's whole thing. It's MSD has to be, they have the requirements, and it doesn't make any difference whether you got a big pool or a small pool. A pool's a pool, and the filters have to be that, and I figure that they know what they're talking about. And we pass our inspections properly, and Pro Pool, the people who do our business, know what they are. So the people, this has to be, we don't have the problem because Pro Pool does it for us, and and MSD is constantly looking over their shoulder and things like that. These people that have the smaller pools and they kind of roll their own, then there's where the mistake is. They have to comply with the MSD standards, just like the bigger pools. The sewer system doesn't know the difference.
Tim,
The majority-
Tim has the floor. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Tim.
So the verbiage that we have in this ordinance mirrors what the city of Manchester has in theirs. That also then circles back to the MSD pool drains. While certain drainage and backflushing and discharging does specifically call out to go into the sanitary, there's I believe a verbiage that also has, for, at proper rates to not create any issues with the sanitary sewer system. So it's not a full, you're not fully draining your pool at full volume. The backflush is a much slower and smaller quantity that's gone through. So, and that mirrors the city of Manchester, and I think there might be one or two others that have the backflushing filters.
Kip?
Yeah, and I mean, and practically speaking, if you're back flushing your filter, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, right? It's an on, you turn it on, and then as I understand it right, you can do that in your yard as long as that backflush effort, that water does not get to the street or get to
Your neighbor.
right?
Your neighbor.
And it's just not, if people are doing it wrong, right, different conversation, right? But if you're doing it right, it's
so yeah,
and off you go.
So yeah, the only issue would be is if you're backflushing at a higher time length that then would create that drainage to go into the neighboring property or into the roadway. So your standard flush can be done into your yard and be contained into your yard unless you're planning on doing a 5 or 10 minute flush where that discharge is going to then flow over, and you're going a little bit beyond what a typical filter back flush would be. So if you're doing that, then you would need to connect into the sanitary and do that flushing at a rate that MSD requires that would not cause any downstream or system backups. So it's as Kip said,
You got to prove that it doesn't leave your property.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing I would offer is that it's if you're taking care of your pool and you're back flushing, it's to your own best interest to do it right. If you do it wrong, it personally costs you more money because you got to put the water back in. So I mean, there's even a personal incentive for somebody to do that part right, unless they're truly draining their pool. Which then if you're draining your pool, then I think what I can see, this puts rules in place to say do it properly, right? Get the chemicals right, get it to the street, do that in a manner that MSD approves, from what I can see.
Further comments?
Yeah, I still think you're missing the point about what is in the effluent from the filter backwash. I just don't see how in the hell you could even get it in a sanitary system.
What number are you referring to on the bill so we all can look at that?
Letter A.
Letter A.
Yeah, letter A. I think that's improperly written, And I don't think there's anything MSD has in their regulations to support what you've said there.
Well, so what it does, I mean, what it says is that this shall be discharged to the sanitary system unless such discharge onto the pool owner's property in a manner which will have it entirely absorbed into that property owner's yard. So again, a 60-second or a 90-second flush, depending on how you have your discharge pipe installed and set up, should dissipate into your own property to where you don't have to connect into any sanitary systems. Your sanitary.
I agree with your theory behind it, but the way if this thing is written, it says shall be discharged into the sanitary sewer system unless such may be discharged onto the pool owner's property. I can't imagine how you could get effluent from a pool filter into the sanitary sewer system.
And again,
you all have drains in the floor of your basement and your garages and stuff. You can just put it right down the same hole. It's going to go into the
not that I'm a pool owner, but if I were a pool owner, I'm going to run a hose from my filter to my floor drain in the basement and clog up my sewer lateral.
Now this is going to encourage you to back flush your pool properly so that you don't have to run it anywhere.
There you go, Tim.
So it's going to encourage good standards, good maintenance standards, and it allows the city to have teeth to then require you as a property owner to follow those good maintenance standards. So as you said, you as a homeowner or anyone as a homeowner is not going to run that to their sanitary. It's going to require you to do the back flush properly and not in a manner that damages neighboring properties or discharges onto those neighboring properties. So that's I think what the main focus should be taken out of both the full complete draining process in B or the filter and backwash in A.
So Tim, you don't have a recommended, the first sentence of letter A, you don't have a recommended change.
I don't.
Mr. Wunderlich, do you?
I'd strike that entirely where it has to do with sanitary.
What does MSD say?
Well, I guess, guys, the practical reality, though, is when you drain your pool, it goes through the filter. So when you drain your pool, sometimes people do this. The first 90 seconds goes through the filter, and then the however many gallons after that go along with it, provided you have, done the right things on the chemicals, right, and adhered to the other aspects that MSD has laid out. So I think that's why it's written like that.
And this is what MSD. So for their proper pool drainage, what they're going to require, and again, I personally would not recommend removing any portion of it, because if you are a property owner and you have your pool set up to where you can't backflush because your backflush drain is piped because your contractor set it up that way within 5 or 10 feet or 10 feet of your neighbor's property line that then dumps onto them, you have to then create the ability for them to backflush without violating the code. And that could either be relocate where your pipe discharges or connect to the pipe and run it to your sanitary. Those are your two options. So, typically if you're doing some kind of code or language, you have to create the opportunity for somebody to be in compliance. So this allows them an alternative to just back flushing and draining onto their yard. If you can't do that because of whatever your situation is or however your pool was constructed, here is your other option of what you have to do that then meets MSD's standard drainage.
That makes sense.
Well, your basement drain is stormwater that leaks into your house somehow one way or the other, and that's the only thing you can pump into into the stream that goes ahead and drains on the surface. That's the only thing that's allowed, as I know of. Anything that comes from something other than the rain that seeps through the ground, a spring or something like that, that gets into your basement that way, has to go into in this case, the sanitary sewer system, I don't know exactly. I mean, there's two systems out there. You have a stormwater drainage system and you have your sanitary system. Sanitary system is a closed pipe system. The stormwater, where you're running down the street, goes into the pipes that go into the inlets and then runs into a creek. Like in my backyard, that's just to get it off the street into the creek.
Yeah, if you're doing your filter backwash flush, the pH in the water is not suitable to then discharge into stormwater. So again, I think, to add to that,
you have to go to sanitary then, right? Yes,
you either have to contain it on your property, or you have to, because it's treated, you should be putting it into a location that's not going to damage aquatic life, the pH in natural creeks and streams, which is what storm sewer goes to. That's also kind of when you get into B, that it has the standards of how you need to let the pH and your chemicals within your pool dissipate to a certain level before you drain it.
So, Mr. Wunderlich, do you have an amendment you would like to bring forward to the bill?
No, I give up.
All right.
So do I have a
I second.
You second giving up, or are you seconding the bill? So
No, I think you have a
motion to approve the bill as written.
I've watched enough. I don't get involved in pools, but I've watched around here in the neighborhood. These guys come in and they winterize a pool. They dump the water out on the street.
They don't care.
They dump the water down the hill. They dump the water on the next guy's property. I watched the guy back flush and I saw all this white powder coming out of this filter. And where's it running? It's running down in the yard.
Yeah.
And
So
my concern is I got a sewer, if it were me with a pool, I got a sewer lateral. I'm no way in hell going to put that discharge effluent into the sanitary, because the next thing I'll do will be dealing with the sewer lateral people, which is something you guys promoted a while back.
Sure. What this does is this allows us the rules to be in place so that we can enforce to the property owners how to properly drain and discharge their pool and backflush, and communicate that to them. We currently, when we get the complaints, we call the property owners, we reach out to those contractors, but there's no ordinance in place. So a lot of these requirements, we already reach out to those companies when we get complaints from the property owners, but we don't have any teeth to really do anything. So.
Right, and we've received phone calls of neighbors draining their pool on the adjacent property. So this helps address that, and then it allows us to send out our code enforcer to help the situation, mitigate the situation. So the motion was on the floor. It was, I didn't capture who approved.
So I
we
guess
have,
I approve.
Tom
you have
was the
first and second, Tim?
Yeah, I think we have Tom as a first and George as a second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by no, nay?
No.
So the ayes have it.
You said you gave up. I'm kidding.
I'm going to Washington tomorrow.
So did we have one nay? Or
I'm
was it-
not sure. So was that a aye or a nay from Mr. Wunderlich?
With a nay.
That was a
No,
nay.
nine,
One nay,
nix,
one nay, Tim.
Nada.
No, nada.
Yeah.
Not happening.
Yeah.
Name not on it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so that, I have to scroll back up to the top of my agenda.
By the way,
Okay.
Bob, I'll have my son look for you. He's Secret Service. He'll be up there.
That concludes our old business. Tim, before I bring our discussion item forward, it is 6:05. We can continue this. Would you like to, when do we have a hard stop to this meeting is my question.
I heard from Ann and she needs to be on at 6:10. So 4 minutes from now.
4 minutes. So, do I open it up and then continue it? Or do we close it down, continue it and close down the meeting is my question.
You know, it's only listed as a discussion item, so I mean, I don't necessarily know that we need to take an action or a motion on it.
Right.
We can just continue the discussion item to the February meeting.
Next meeting, right. Makes sense.
So I guess, I'm sorry, I guess I didn't phrase it. Do you even want to start the discussion was my question.
With
No.
4 minutes, I'm not going to really be able to get
Hit the
into
high notes. Okay,
anything.
gotcha.
Anything that I talk about is probably going to need to be revisited in February, so it's not even.
True.
not even-
True. Okay.
Move to
So then we
adjourn.
will, I'm sorry, what?
Second.
Then we'll move to adjourn.
Yes. I'll
Okay,
second.
okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Thank you for your time tonight. I know it was a
Good.
long one, but good
Good job.
conversation.